Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I'm going to show y'all how to make, boom, these pieces. So let's get started. The tools and materials that we'll need to make this project are 16 or 18 gauge. This is American wire gauge. I'm using enameled copper core wire from parawire.com. Links for all of the different tools and materials will be down in the video description, as well as a link to our curated toolkit that covers my entire toolkit for wire wrapping, chainmail, polymer clay, all the different stuff that we do here at Back to Earth Creations. That way, if you're new to this, or if you just kind of want to see what's in my toolbox, you can go and click on that and kind of scroll through, and it can get you started shopping or give you some different ideas. But yeah, 16 gauge is what I'm using. This could also be done in 18 gauge round or square, but I'm using 16 gauge round, and 26 gauge for our weaving wire. You could use 24 gauge, you could use 28 or 30 gauge. I like the 26 gauge because I'm going to edit in a picture right here. And in this picture you can see I did a figure 8 weave for the bail, and that's much more, that's much easier for me to do with the 26 gauge and get it to kind of hold its position than it is for the 28 gauge. But entirely up to you and your creativity and your preference. This is just a framework for you to follow along with, and then I please invite you to make as many modifications and changes and just have it evolve in however you feel compelled. So 16 gauge and 26 gauge are what I'm using in this tutorial, and that is American wire gauge, not standard wire gauge. I'm using round nose, bent nose, and flush cutters, but you could also use, like if you don't like using bent nose pliers, regular old flat nose, or even stepped flat nose or chain nose pliers would work as well. And then for mandrels, I have a ring mandrel and a smaller mandrel, but you could use a pen instead of the small mandrel. You could use a chopstick, or I mean just anything that you have that is or a knitting needle actually would be perfect, because you want it to have a uniform thickness to be able to bend your bail over. And then instead of a ring mandrel, you could use a prescription pill bottle, you could use the cap of a water bottle, just anything to help you achieve a nice uniform curved shape. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. I always try to give myself a little bit more wire than what I think I'll need. Parawire is affordable enough that I don't sweat it if I'm, cutting off a couple of inches of scrap at the end of a project. Though I do save all of my scrap wire because, well, I'm a hoarder also. But you just never know whenever you might only need an inch or two of wire for something. So I have cut about 13 inches of wire. The size stone that I am using here is about 30 to 35 millimeters by 20 millimeters. And so if you have a smaller stone, you might use less wire. If you're using a much larger stone, you'll need to use larger wire, or longer wire. Gosh, I was trying to word, you guys. I really was. And also this design can be modified to use ovals, squares, hearts, just whatever you decide that you want to frame. But I am using for this tutorial these fused glass teardrops that we sell on our website, backtoearthcreations.com. Randy and I actually make these here in our house with our kiln from crushed up bits of glass, and we do weekly shop updates where if you like our work and you want to support what we're doing and get some cabs for it, you can go and check that out. They start at just $4 a piece, so we try to keep it pretty affordable. So I'm going to come through here and find roughly the center of our wire, and I'm gripping. This is a time that it would be pretty good to use your flat nose pliers, but I'm trying to keep my workspace kind of tidy for the sake of the video, so I don't want to have pliers flopping around everywhere. So I'm just going to bend a 90-degree angle, actually maybe a little bit sharper than a 90-degree angle. There we go. like that, because you want it to kind of frame the tip of your bead. And I'm going to go through and try to emulate that exact bend again. So you want them to be able to fit nice and snug together. Now you could, if you can see here, in the design that I had showed a little earlier, the picture of a previous piece, I had incorporated just a little bead right there. So again, there's a lot of different opportunities for modification to make the design more your own. Now I'm going to be pulling off 2.5 arm spans, and I'm 5'4", so let's call that 2 arm spans is 10 feet. So it's like 13 feet, sure, of our 26 gauge wire. Again, I just want to give myself a bit more than what we need because I really don't want to have to mess about with splicing in more wire. If the wire breaks, then I'll show you guys how to splice more in, but I'm really hoping that doesn't happen. Though I have covered splicing techniques in other tutorials as well. So I'm gonna just pick one of the wires, and I have found the center of our 26 gauge, again, roughly, and I am going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 full rotations around our wire. And they're just little coils like that. And now I'm going to bring this down, and I'm going to center it up on the tip of our weaving. Actually, I think for the tip here, we've done 5 rotations, and it never really, my wire weaving never really wants to sit comfortably on the tip if I try to scooch it over. So we're going to go, that was 5, so there's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, you know, it didn't particularly sit all that great this way either. So I'm just using my fingernails to try to get that nice and just centered as much as possible on the tip. And now I'm going to come in and add in our second piece of wire, our second core wire. And you can see I'm just following the direction of the wires. I want to make sure that it's just wrapping around both of them. We aren't doing any of the figure 8. So what I mean by that is I'm going to wrap once and twice around both of our wires. And if you can see how it wrapped all the way around, as opposed to if I were to put the wire in between them. That is an option, but that's just not what we're doing today. Now I am going to do, we did 2 wraps around both, and now I'm going to go 1. I'm going to open this up just a little bit more. That way whenever I bring my wire around, it's a little bit easier to make sure I'm snagging the correct wire. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The whole while I'm smushing it down in my fingernails. Also, you could just use your pliers if that's preferable to you. And then I'm going to wrap 2 around 2 rotations around both core wires, and then 5 around just 1. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Giving it a good smush. I've found to get consistent coiling, for me at least, if I focus on the placement of each coil and like do constant like smushing and managing of its placement, then I have a much better outcome than if I weave a whole bunch and then try to smush it back down. Okay, so we've woven our 5. I'm going to move all of that wire off to the side, and then come around now to the other side because I want to keep things pretty symmetrical. And that's easier to do if we do like incrementally on one side and then on the other side. So gonna go, there's 1 and 2. And hold your piece however is most comfortable for you and that gives you the most control over your project. So I've just flipped this around. It feels kind of funny. What's going on here? Okay, it's just not particularly tight. So if you do your coils or your wraps and it's not feeling as tight as what you would like, feel free to unwrap it a bit and then really cinch that down. There we go. That's much more snug. I like that. Okay, so now 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now 2 around both. Okay. And now I'm going to do the 5 more rotations just to get it to match the other side, and then I want to show you guys, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I am doing this tutorial in real time. I am going to be cutting some parts out whenever it's just a whole bunch of repetition, but my heart is always with the beginners. So for those of y'all who've woven wire 1,000 times, please feel free to skip ahead, or you know, YouTube has a feature where you can put it into 2 times speed, but otherwise I wanted to give you guys a very real concept of how much work it goes into something like this. Now here we're doing where there's 5 weaves in between, like 5 wraps in between whenever we weave around both, and we do have the option to where this piece here, you can see we have 10 repetitions of that coil in between whenever we wrap around both. So you can get different effects by you know, just very small changes like that, even just from piece to piece. So I am going to continue coiling and weaving our pattern until I have enough. Like whenever doing 10 in between each, we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 repetitions. So I'm presuming that I'm going to need to do 18 repetitions. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I've completed one side. I think I've gotten far enough along that I'd like to test it and kind of show y'all proportionately how far along we've come now. Because if I've gone too far, I'd like to not go too far on both sides. So I'm going to be using our ring mandrel on its thickest part, and I'm just going to start curving this around because this is going to be the shoulder of the piece, and I don't want to twist these wires. You can see it has a tendency for one to move farther back. If that happens, just take your pliers and kind of gently get everything lined back up with itself. And now we can hold that position there. So this actually, doing 18 repetitions, so I actually only did 17, actually got us significantly farther than what I think I needed to be. So I'm actually going to remove 2 of them and just have it where we've done 15 repetitions. So to remove our weaving, we just kind of put it in rewind and carefully unwrap. I'm trying to not put too much stress on the wire. Okay. And now that we're here, I've lost my nylon jaw pliers. I typically would use those, but I am just gonna, kind of run it out with my fingernail. You could use a piece of denim folded over to kind of pull across, but keep in mind that's going to work harden your work, which makes it more brittle, makes your wire more brittle. Yes, I think that is much better. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we've done our 15 rotations, and I want to make sure to finish it up on 5 coils, the same way the other side is. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Give it all a good smush. Now you do not want to cut your wire off at this point, because that's what we're going to be making the bail with. So I'm just going to come right back in here like this. Oops. Shaping the wire around. And a tip to, you can kind of count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So on the 7th coil here, or the 7th, where we wrapped both, is where it starts to curve around. So to get it mirror imaged, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it looks like we could bend in just a little bit more on this side. There we are. And you can even just use your fingers to make sure that both of our core wires are staying nice and parallel to each other and in the same plane. And now we can kind of just give that stuff a smoosh. Because right now, if we brought everything together completely, whoop, super durable. Let me go retrieve that. Okay, so if we were to bring those ends together, it makes it just a little too tight up on the shoulders from what I'd like for it to be. So I'm going to, we have 5 coils. I'm going to go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then wrap around both. So we're making it go from 15 to 16 repetitions of the design. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now also, this is just one weave that you can do around the edges of your design. You could have, 10 core wires if you wanted, and you can still figure out a way to be able to make this design happen. But I just thought it looked kind of nice with the simplistic frame. So that's 1 and 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I get, whenever I'm talking with folks, I get a question a lot about how to keep your core wires stable, and I've found working from the center of your piece outward, it helps me tremendously, because you don't have to worry so much about, your ends out here being nice and stable. It's where out on the piece. So even if I'm having, let's say we have 4 core wires, I'd start weaving around the 1, and then start adding in the 2nd, and then the 3rd, and then the 4th, and then build it off into each direction. So, though also using tools like ring clamps, little wing nut clamps, desk vices, painter's tape, all sorts of different things. Use whatever you feel like it takes to get the result that you're looking for. Okay. Can confirm, super durable. So now we want to start making our bail. So I'm going to put a 90-degree bend. I'm grabbing this outside most wire and just bending up, and then grabbing on the other side and bending up, because I'm relying on that coil. That's why I do the 5 afterwards, is to cinch it down, because I'm relying on this wrapping right here to hold together. That way it'll kind of give a similar bend on each side. Now we could also, if you wanted a very sharp bend, we could come in with our flat nose pliers, and let's see if we can't just grab like that and sound effects can be very helpful. Oops. And so here you can see that gives us a much sharper bend than if we just curve it. So however you decide to go about it, I do recommend just being consistent. That can make the biggest difference in whether something looks intentional or maybe kind of is sloppy, which sometimes sloppy is exactly what you're looking for. So again, you do you. So just for the sake of contrast, I'm going to do this side with sharp bends because this design I had done with the gentle curve. And so now we are going to join the cross section. I actually want this wire on top of that one because we're going to be dealing with these two center wires to make our bail. Actually on this side. So we have the 5 rotations. I'm starting with the section in my left hand, going to push our weaving wire through, pull it all the way, and then I'm just wrapping around both of these center wires. And now I'm going to pin it on the back with my finger, and I'm wrapping around the same wire that we were attached to, that our weaving wire was attached to. I'm just smooshing all that nice and together. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that we've done 5, I do at least 5 because it holds the tension. If we only do 1 or 2 repetitions of the coiling, then it'll kind of just pull back out on itself, but I like to do 5, tighten things up, and now I'm going to go through and do the second set of 5. So we'll have a total of 10 coils on this wire. So it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now I'm going to leave that side be for now, and we're going to start looking at this other side, the wire from the other side rather. So if you need to bend anything just a little bit to get it out of each other's way, feel free to do that. So I just want to come around here now, and I'm pushing this wire through to the back side, pulling all the way through, being careful to not kink it. And I want the wires to look invisible. Like I want the join to be invisible. So I'm just laying this wire right beside the other one. And then coming around to the front and hooking around the one. So I'm going to pull this wire out just a little bit to give us some more space right there. Then that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's get a close look at what we've done. So it's not quite as perfect as what I would like. Let's see if maybe smooshing doesn't help with that. If it gets difficult to use your fingernails, just come in with your pliers. I'm squeezing them just hard enough that they're holding firm, but they're not gripping the heck out of that core wire. That way I can just use them to push everything together, and that does much more than my fingernails alone could. So that was 5. So we're going to do 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 repetitions. So now I'm just getting our weaving wires kind of oriented correctly, and I want to brace my finger and just put a little bit of a curve in our wire, and I'm going to do that on both sides. Okay, and so now Again, it's sitting, the wire's sitting like it would do a figure eight. That's not what we're going for right now. You could do a figure eight if you want, but that's not how I'm doing it. So again, I can't emphasize enough how much there is no such thing as doing something wrong. It's just for this pattern, this is the repetition, this is the pattern I'm trying to do. So wrapping on the outsides of both wires. So there's once and twice. So you see how that's working? I'm going to go ahead and bend this away just a little bit more. We can always bring it back, but I want to make enough space right there that the wire will fit back in. So just like that. And I'm going to do 5 rotations. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that'll keep everything nice and tight while we use our pliers. How can I fit my hand in here? There we go. To kind of smush that all down. So it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Bring that wire off to the side so it's out of our way. We're now going to do the same exact thing on the other side. So we have our 10 wraps. Then I'm going to bend this one just towards the back a bit just to get it more out of the way. So there is 1 wrap and 2 wrap. And now I'm going to wrap 5 times around this wire. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, and it's looking great. We don't even have to struggle that much to smush. So let's keep going with 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Smush. There we go. And now I'd like to keep the crosses happening, like the crisscross. This wire was on top for this crossover, so I want this wire on top for that crossover, and it just gives it a nice like braided look. So now, grabbing far out on the wire because that gives it a more gradual bend, I'm just bringing these 2 wires together because I'm trying to join and do the same kind of cross section as what we did here, but on the on this cross section. So sometimes it can help to overbend just a little. So this is the weaving wire that comes from the left side, if you can differentiate. And I'm just bringing it around and then wrapping back around that left, the wire that was coming from on the left. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go ahead and do 10. So there's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but actually this is our second loop, so we're going to do 15 to make it grow a little. That's 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Smush. There we go. So, and that's how we get that little bit of where it flares out some. So now we're going to come around on this side. That wire's coming around this way, so we're just going to wrap around the back, which we have a nice little gap there. So you can see wrapping around the back. And then there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is where I'm going to start smushing the heck out of it. Try to get that nice and together. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Very cool. Get all that weaving wire kind of off and out of the way. Let me try to keep from wandering off camera. So now we shall again, grabbing kind of far out on the wire, start bending. You could use a mandrel or something here if you liked, but I find it's nice to get practice in just using your hands, because sometimes I can't find my mandrels, but I can typically always find my hands. So just bringing this border, like this framing wire, to the side and wrapping. Let me get that one out of the way. Again, just making that little bit of separation so it's so much easier to get my weaving wire in where I need it to be. And I am going to do 5 rotations here. So that's 1, 2, 3. Actually, I'm just going to do 4 because I feel like it. You can do 5 if you want. But this is going to be the top of our bale. So that's how that looks. It kind of holds everything together. You don't want to have that weaving section be too wide, because then whenever you fold it over, things are going to start looking kind of weird maybe. But you don't want it too narrow either. I don't know, maybe you do. It made sense to my mind that that's going to be one of the wear points on the bale, like where it would be rubbing against a chain, so it wouldn't hurt to, double up. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then 5 more, so that's 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. You can also feel free to sneak some little beads in these cross sections. Just really dress this up. Okay, was that 15? Sure. Okay, so again, we want to bring this wire to where it meets the other. So I'm going to wrap. There's once, there's twice, 3 times, and 4 times. Again, you really want to keep those nice and smushed, but not like laying on top of each other. Nice and tidy wraps. And so now we can start doing, just let me get all these wires out of the way. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and right there, that's an example of the gap that I'd like to avoid. So to get rid of that gap, I just bend this over a little bit more. Whoa, sorry, loud noises. And then I'm going to use my pliers to just really smush that down and together. And you can see how that closed that gap, at least a little bit. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Welcome to the count 15 hour. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. But this is, I enjoy wire weaving almost because it's so mind consuming for me, of just counting to 5, 10, or 15 over and over and over again. It's kind of a meditation. You can pair your breathing along with it. Just, have some Netflix or something going in the background. Or some of our vlog channel, shameless self-promotion. We do have a vlog now that if y'all were fans of our older work and liked the gardening and yoga and all that stuff, that's now over on our personal channel, and we do daily vlog posts over there, so be sure to check it out if you're into that. Shameless self-promotion. Okay, here we go. So I'm just pushing these sides together a little bit more and using the wire that's again coming from the left side. I'm just going to bring that around. So I'm pushing this wire through. And that's giving us a full rotation around, a full loop. I don't know if I did that on the last one actually. Oops. Then 1, 2, 3, 9, 10. Because now we're going to be shrinking back down to the original sized loop. And if you don't want that flare out, then you could just do 10, across the way, and it would make it, to where they're parallel to each other. Okay, so now we have this wire. We're going to push through to the back because we want to do that same thing on the other side. And I want this to be kind of invisible. So we're going to come around the front. And just tuck that wire in between the others. So you can kind of see maybe how they did that. And so now we're going to bring that tail end up and wrap 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see if we can zoom in super far. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So every time I flip the piece over, to keep from getting tangled up on myself, I pull the weaving wires completely off to each side. I just want to make sure that they're out of each other's ways. That way I'm not getting a bunch of tangled mess happening later on. Getting everything nice and smushed together. Please be patient with me if I wander off the camera. And so now from here, we're going to take our bent nose flat nose pliers. And I'm going to, I don't actually think I'm going to use our flat nose pliers. I think I'm going to have to do this just with a gentle curve coming in from each side. So we've done that. Let me zoom back out for y'all. There we go. So I'm displaying that out just a little bit because we're going to end with the wire, being that wide again. And I'm pinching here in the center and just bending this around. That way we can get the side of our weaving up against our frame wire. So there's one wrap, and it doesn't want to behave, so I'm going to squeeze it. Because sometimes giving it a good squeeze just helps. And there's 2 wires. Smoosh. There we go. And I'm going to do our 10 wraps on this side. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you can see they're still kind of stacking on top of each other, and that is not what we're going for. So I just get in there and grab on the wrap point and then twist. And that helps reorient it in the correct direction. And then giving it a smush, as you do. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now bending this around so that it comes into good contact with our side. And actually, I need these wires to be... Oh, I messed up on that, didn't I? Well, I sure did. I was supposed to have this wire on top. This is life now. Whoopsie. You can see how stressed out I am about it. So, but we can at least pretend with this. This is actually the back side anyhow, so hooray. But if this wire's on top, then I want going across for that one to be on top. I got a little too wrapped up in what I was doing to make sure I was doing it correctly. And again, correctly for what I was wanting to do. So there's 2 wraps. I'm actually just gonna get that guy, there we go, out of the way entirely. So there's our 2 wraps on that side. And now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just pushing that down a bit. And then I have an easier time wrapping from this direction, so that's why I keep flipping my project over. You do you though. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. What did I do on this one? Yep, I still joined them together. Okay, so we'll get a third go at joining these pieces together. Bringing them around town. Splaying these ends here just to get them out of the way. So we have our wire coming over. And through. And this is just one way of going about this too. I'm sure I'm doing it just a little different every single time, which is a little maddening, but also that's how evolution happens. That's how you start stumbling into something new with a piece. So we have it wrapped around. Right there. Oh, I hear you, puppy. And the dogs are closed out of the room and they're very upset about it. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Rotations around both. So now we're going to do the wrap on the other side. I just want to bring that around, getting it to lay there we go. Let me get this other wire out of the way. Pressing it through our center. And technically I don't guess you have to do this joining. I just think it's a good idea to keep everything all snug and secure and tight together. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So now we get to decide which side we think is prettier. Just as far as the bail goes, or on the rest of our weaving. This side to me is my sloppy side, so this side is going to be the outside. I'm going to fold kind of that way over it, that way we don't have to worry about anybody noticing where I messed up or anything. So that being said, so the side that's facing me is going to be the inside. So this wire here, I am going to trim our tail of our weaving wire just as close to our coiling as we can get without, I don't want to cut anything, you know, that doesn't need to be cut. And just smush that down with a squeeze and a twist. That way it keeps everything all nice and tight. And now about 5 millimeters past where our coiling stops, I'm going to snip it. And now I'm going to use our round nose pliers, getting as close to the tip of the wire and as close to the tip of our pliers as we can. And then just turning like so, making a nice little loop like that. And I want to get that just as closed and snug as we can up against the rest of our weaving. So now I'm going to bend this wire around. I'm pinching with my finger and my thumb. And I want to go through the center of that loop that we've made, being careful to not cross over any of my other coiling. And I'm going to wrap to where it joins all three of those pieces together. And that's one wrap, and then we're going to come on in and do, whoop, bumped the tripod, sorry. We're going to come on in and do a second rotation around both. Just because I think it makes it look more substantial, and it certainly is going to be a lot stronger if we double our wrapping. And now I'm coming up and doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just flipping it over because I like weaving from that direction. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I just know to do 15 because that's how many I did on this one, and I liked how that came out. So I'm taking this and coming around to the other side, getting that nice shape going, and I'm actually gonna just bring that around through. Bending a little bit more. There we go. And now again, going through the center of both of those loops, making sure I'm not overlaying any of our other coiling. There's one rotation, one wrap, and 2 wraps. And now I'm going to come up and through right there. You can kind of see. Or wherever you want, if you find a place that you prefer to have your wire come through. And now I'm going to wrap once, twice, thrice, fourths, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Also, by the way, I'm sure some of y'all have noticed I have my finger taped up. I tend to get a blister right here, or a very, very tender spot, and I like to use this roll of Next Care first aid tape that has seen some better days. It's got alcohol ink, acrylic paint stains, like just, I've had this spool for like 5 years, but a little goes a long way, and so I use that almost like moleskin, but I like it because it doesn't leave any sticky residue on your skin. And it holds up through, I mean, a lot of abuse. So we've done 10 wraps. I'm going to snip and smush. There we go. And again, giving myself, I'm going to do like 7 millimeters this time, just because. Snipping that. And I'm going to grab as close to the tip of the wire and as close to the tip of my pliers as I can. Oops, that's okay, that happens. And I'm going to put that little swirl in there, and now smoosh it all together. It's nice and flat. You could use your nylon jaw pliers for that too, but I lost mine. So, and now from here, you can see that's the back side, that's the front side. So I'm going to take our mandrel and I'm laying it across those two wraps there. And I'm going to fold this over and around, smushing together there. And now I'm going to come in and snip about there on both of these wires. I highly recommend putting an initial bend where you want your wire to bend. Just that little bit can help it have so much direction and purpose with where, whenever it's bending, with where it's going to go. So I'm flipping this over and just putting that little bit of a bend in it. And now we can grab by the end of our wire, holding with our pliers because my hands are tired, and just wrapping around like this. And you can see it settled in very nicely, just right there, like so. So we're gonna do that same thing on the other side, just bending around. Now you could finish this with a little swirl if you wanted. I am just going to come in with my flush cutters and cutting at a little bit of an angle. You can see like that. And that just makes it very smooth to the touch on both sides. And now I'm going to come in and smush that wire in to make sure it's not going to snag anybody. Testing for pokey bits, feels pretty good. And so here we have the frame, which is the labor-intensive part, I'm just going to say. If you have any odd shaping problems or anything like that, now is the time to address that before we get our stone suspended. It's looking pretty good though. Very, very pleased actually with how that bail came out. So now we're going to use about, almost 4 feet of 26 gauge wire, and I'm going to come through with one end of it through the inside of our bail, and then I'm just going to grab that and I want it to come through, yeah, we're just going through the bail and then making our ends lined up. So just like this. But I want that wire to kind of hide and tuck in between there. Let's see if we can get this to focus. So see how our 26 gauge is kind of sitting there like that? And now we'll come around and I'm going to have these wires cross. And I'm coming through to, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, basically the broad point of the shoulder. I'm wrapping, coming around on the right side of our wire through the center, and then coming down on the left side in this section there. And you want to make sure to have put a good bend in the wire right here on the edge, because as we come around, we don't want that coming loose. We're getting like wiggly with us at all. So I'm just kind of cinching it tight like that. Not too tight though, this is just 26 gauge wire. And then let's do that same thing on the other side. So we counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the 6th. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the 6th. And it actually looked like we were a little past it. So I'm just going to come around, coming through on the right side of our wire, and then coming back in that little section there. Trying to not get any kinks in the wire as we come, okay, 1, 2, 3, okay, as we come down and cinch it, because now we're going to come across to this side, and coming from the point, 1, 2, 3, 4 from the point. And so now I'm going to come down on this side and up on the other side. And I'm actually going to come back down through the tip, like that area right there. So this one, unlike the others, has a full loop around it. Let's see. There we go. You can kind of see how it has that full loop wrapped around. So now let's try to emulate that same thing on the other side. So our wire is going to come through. If it's not looking as straight as you want, you can press your thumbnail against it and pull, and that kind of tightens any of the kinks out of it. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's wrapping around. Coming through on this side. It's not particularly nitpicky if you come in on one side or the other. I'm just trying to be consistent, but I think I'm too forgetful, and I think I'm being consistent, but I'm not. But if I can do it, y'all can do it. You got this, guys. And then I'm going to complete that loop around. Yeah, I totally did the side backwards to the other one. That's fine though. It hasn't caught on fire or anything. It will be okay. Okay. So now we have, this is the webbing that's going to hold the back of our bead or our cabochon. So now, holding our cab in place, we're going to come across on the right side. See how it's kind of holding like that? And then before securing anything, we're going to do that same thing with our other wire. Now, if this is very fidgety for you, you could use some tape to hold your bead in place. Just whatever makes you feel confident and stable and secure in what you're doing. Okay, so we came through on this side, so now we're going to exit on the bottom side. That way it loops around that wire. And I'm pulling snug, but not like crazy death grip tight, because I don't want to stress the wire too much. I'm snagging all my pliers. So yeah, that's crossing up over to the top. And so this is an example of if you don't come out on the same side, one side will look a little higher or lower than the other. But that's okay, we can work with that. This is a soft enough wire, you can kind of just nudge it to be in the correct position. So now from here, we've wrapped around. And so I want to come like right here on the shoulder. So I'm wrapping around. I've placed my finger against that, and I'm going to come up between the wire and the top of our piece, pull kind of tight, I'm going to do that on the other side as well, just so that I can maintain tension. There we are. And now coming back down through from the front, again, so that we get a little bit of a cinch on that wire. See how it puts that loop there? So I'm going to do that same thing on the other side. And it just tightens it down nicely. And then I'm actually going to be wrapping around from the back side, or am I? Maybe? Yes, I think I am. Okay. Before we do this second layer, I want to make sure our bead is suspended nice and centered up between everything. So now I'm going to come through, entering between there with our wire, and then coming up and through on the other side. And I want to just wrap around, giving ourselves a little bit of space, so you can see it's making that nice little knotwork look there on the side. And then just coming through, if we exited on this side of this wire that's already there, and then I want to enter in on that side. I don't want to cross over, unless you do want to cross over, in which case do that. And now I'm going to do like 3 wraps to bind off this wire. So there's 1, and you can see I'm just stacking them as tidy as I can side by side. This will be 2, trying to not cross the wires. There we are. And this will be 3. There we go. Excellent. I'm going to wait to snip that in just a moment, because now we get to do this over on the other side. So we've exited on the back, so I'm wrapping around, and I'm going to come in through that section there between our bead and the frame, or a cab. I think you all know what I mean though, but it's not my intent to be confusing if I keep saying different words for the same things. Okay, and now coming up through this section right here. Okay, coming around, coming through right there, being very careful to not get any kinks in the wire. If you just go slow and patient and mindful, you'll do just fine. And then coming up through kind of towards the tip. And there's 1 loop. Bringing this up. And I like to get it nice and, there we go, nice and positioned on the back side before we do the front side. Now this is going to want to be a kink, so we just get that straightened up and opened back out. Our wire's starting to get a little stiff. That's okay and fully expected. And then we're going to do our 3rd and final wrap over here on this side. And that's that. So now we can come in and just very carefully snip with our flush cutters on both sides. Now I've left just a little bit, of space, like of tail there, if you can see. Kind of see how that little tail right there is just enough to snag a fingernail on, but I'm just coming in with my bent nose pliers and smushing that down. There we go. Oops, that's okay. It's alright if your pliers slip, it's alright if you break your wire, it's okay. Ooh, and our shoulder had actually slipped out, so I'm going to show you guys how we can stabilize on the back. And you just kind of press with your fingernails and get everything to come in. And you could do more wrapping if you wanted on the back side. You can also come in and tighten up here on the shoulders. And if anything's not looking quite as symmetrical as what you would like, feel free to do however much as you feel is necessary to get this to be as secure and symmetrical and just as perfect as what you want it to be. So I am going to go through on each of the shoulders and give it a nice smush, because that you'll be surprised how much smushing just reduces the amount of wiggling that a piece will do. And there we are. Very cool. You could also, if you know that you're very hard on your jewelry and you don't quite trust the thin wire, you could go through with a 2-part epoxy or even a UV resin on the back, and it would have helped too. On this piece here, you can see I'd actually done like a twist tie twist. That can be really helpful for keeping everything nice and tense and tight, and also for keeping these shoulder pieces from sliding up and over, because you can see it lowers and stabilizes that connection point. But I'm going to test wear these and see how they go. But so far I'm pretty pleased with them. Hey y'all, thank you so much for joining us in this tutorial. I do hope that it was helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave them down below. All of our social media and website and links to everything are down in the video description. If you enjoy our free tutorials and would like to support the creation of more of them, please consider joining us over on Patreon. We, for just as little as $1 a month, we do patron exclusive live streams, sneaky peekies of our tutorials, artisan features, just all sorts of stuff. Like, go check it out if you're interested. We also sell cabochons on our website, backtoearthcreations.com. You can click on our shop and our craft along materials, and that's where, if you don't want to pledge on Patreon but you still want to participate in our Cab of the Month club and different things like that, we have avenues for that over on our website. But we do weekly shop updates with new colors and styles and like all sorts of stuff, so be sure to check that out. Yeah, I think other than that, that's it, you guys. So again, any questions or anything like that, I'll do my best to help you out any way that I can. And until next time, y'all, happy crafting.